Jackie Gonzalez. Jackie is a graduate student at the Elliott Pearson Department for Child Development at Tufts. Jackie is going to share with us one of her greatest passions, creativity at its core.
Well, tonight I'm going to be talking about creativity. What I'm not going to be talking about is how super fun creativity is, or how we need to save the arts, or how we should all discover ourselves with song and dance. I'm here to talk about that we need creativity in our lives, and that the reality we're facing is that we need to strip creativity from all the fluff in order to make it matter. So what is creativity? Who would I say are creative thinkers? Politicians, programmers, journalists, engineers. I could go on. Creativity doesn't necessarily mean artistic. In fact, IBM recently named creativity as the most sought out skill for CEOs and new hires. And it makes sense. The ability to be creative can help shape a plethora of skills, be it the ability to make a quick but informed decision during a crisis, to troubleshoot your way through a computer program, or simply by taking risks during a lunch meeting. You know, times call for taking big risks, making big decisions, and functioning without templates. A creative staff is not just nice for a functioning business, but required for survival. So why is creativity so overlooked? Why is it not fostered in schools? For starters, there's a huge disagreement and huge focus on how kids are forced to believe that there's one right answer to everything. Last month, I spent a week teaching 4-year-olds robotics. And we told them that they were to draw something, anything that they'd later build with Legos. Be a plane, a car, a bridge. When the teacher would ask them what they were doing, they would freeze up because they were so certain that what they were doing was wrong. This fear of failure shuts down the brain's ability to think creatively. We see this already with 4-year-olds, and I'm pretty sure we see this in college classrooms. I also don't need to go into details about the huge preference over performance over learning. It's easier to measure, and it's also a core component of something that I know we're all familiar with, assessments. Assessments shape students, teachers, schools, and districts. And the most frustrating part of all of this is that most people will just shrug and say, well, that's the way it goes. But I'm looking to push that. If you can't beat them, join them, right? So how can we make creativity have work in a system that just doesn't monetize it? My answer, by measuring creativity. Assignments would be focused on collaboration, troubleshooting, and the process. The focus would be on mastery of concepts. Traditionally, if a student were to grade something or complete an assignment and they did it correctly, they would get an A. And if they didn't do it correctly, they'd get, well, not an A. But if the student got that answer just by plugging and chugging, then there was no creativity involved. Yet if the student were to get the answer incorrectly, but honestly show some creative thought during the process, then that should be accounted for. We should be thinking about that. And so for creativity's sake, it's important that we look at the why they did what they did. For a more concrete example, let's look at the video game Portal. So I'm a bit of a gamer, and so I was beyond enthused to see the use of the game Portal being used as a teaching tool. Portal is a simple, fun, complex-ish game, as it goes on, that focuses, basically the premise is the user has to get from one end of the room to another by developing portals. And this sounds easy enough, but core concepts like logic, planning, and abstract thinking are required in order to succeed. More so, advanced concepts like velocity are integrated as the game continues to be advanced. An assignment for this could be as simple as completing a level, or it could be more complex if you add restraints. An example of these restraints could be limiting the number of portals one can use, or limiting the number of steps one can take, forcing them to use strictly portals. This experience could culminate with a project that demonstrates how they were able to successfully complete the task, or how and where they got stuck. Students would have the freedom to create this project in any way they choose, be it an essay, a model, or applying it to another situation. And now we have captured the way that we can observe how the thought process was made in a way that can be measured more traditionally. And if the student failed to complete the task, we'd still be able to see that and give credit where it's due. An alternative approach to this is the concept of self-grading. Students could have the ability to check off certain things as they completed the task to prove proficiency. And students could also actually demonstrate the tasks through performing them. This seems simplistic, but it proves that these students were not just guessing or memorizing facts. And it is so much harder to model solutions than to just mark answers on a test. It shows an active engagement in the material, and this shows creativity. A more traditional classroom example of this could be the use of mathematical proofs. If a student were to demonstrate properties of a triangle, they would simply choose a property of a triangle, and they could either make a model, do a demonstration, or create something as simple as this. Now, when we would approach this, we would say, okay, did the student respond to the question? Do they have a clear way of explaining the property that they're choosing to demonstrate? And did they identify proper components? Notice here that the focus is not on the external effort displayed, but rather on their understanding of the concept as demonstrated by their ability to share it with others. Now, with all this talk on creativity, it's important to note that there are certainly times where creativity is not the most important thing. We certainly wouldn't want a doctor getting creative when removing our appendix, but we would want them to be constantly thinking and creating new, efficient solutions to medical procedures. We have to encourage each other to think and reflect and ask why and what if. And the first step towards doing so could be through measuring creativity and teaching creative thinking in schools. The second, of course, is by nurturing our own and each other's creative potentials throughout our lives. Through this type of learning, opposition is bound to happen. Concerns will arise. Is this challenging enough? How can my students stand out if the focus is on proficiency? How is the world going to work if kids are trained that it's not only okay to make mistakes, but encouraged? Could this lead to too much freedom or too much experimentation? You know, I heard of a guy once that spent years developing what he thought was a novel invention. He made over 3,000 attempts before his idea came to fruition. And when he was asked how he dealt with all that failure and all that frustration, he simply said, I didn't fail 3,000 times. I found 3,000 ways to create a light bulb. Thomas Edison took 3,000 risks, made 3,000 mistakes, and yet created one of the most inventive inventions ever. Risks are inherent in creativity. How many risks will we take? Thank you.